Have you ever tried to get rid of a bad habit? Maybe biting your nails, maybe giving up smoking, but no matter how hard you try, you keep slipping back into those old patterns and old behaviors. Well, today we're going to talk about why it's so hard to change bad habits. So, principle based living is all about understanding the principles or the laws that govern the world in which we live. Einstein said that God does not play dice with the universe, basically meaning that we don't live in a world of chance. We live in a world that is governed by laws, which means it's a world of order. And even when things happen in this life that we think or feel are unfair, the truth is there's reasons behind why those things happen. And when we don't understand the rules, then it seems like we live in a world of chance. And think about what this world would be like if there were no laws, or if there were no principles that govern the world in which we live. So sometimes gravity worked, and sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes when you go out and, well, I won't use that one because that's true. I was going to say sometimes when you go start your car, it starts, and sometimes it doesn't. But even with that, when it doesn't start, there's a reason why it doesn't start. And because there are laws and principles, we can identify why it's not starting. Maybe it's the battery is dead. And so if it's a dead battery, well, we know what we need to do in order to fix it, to help our car start. So we live in a world based on principles. So how is it then that we create bad habits? Is it just luck? Is it just chance? No, because in life, from the day that we're born, everything we do for a reason. So think about it. When a newborn baby is here and they cry, are they crying for no reason? Or is there a reason behind why they are crying? There's a reason. So maybe they're hungry. Maybe they have a messy diaper. Maybe they're feeling sad. Maybe they're cold. Who knows what it is, but there's something going on that has influenced the baby to start crying. When the baby cries, then there's a response to that crying. Let's say that when the baby cries, then the mother or father or caretaker comes and picks up the baby, feeds the baby, changes the diaper, just holds the baby. If that response is something that gives the baby what the baby was wanting or needing, then they're going to learn from a very early age that whenever I'm feeling this way, this discomfort or whatever it is, that if I cry, then I may get the change or the help that I want. So if every time the baby cries, then somebody comes and checks on the baby and feeds it or changes its diaper, then it's going to be conditioned to know that this is a safe world in which the child lives, and that if I have a need, I can reach out to others and others will help me meet that need. Now, if I'm a baby that, I feel some discomfort and I cry, but nobody comes, and that continues over time, well, I may learn that crying doesn't work, and I may stop crying, and I may begin to believe that I live in a world that is unsafe, and it doesn't do any good to ask for help outside of me. So from the very beginning, we begin to be conditioned to behave in certain ways. And when we behave in ways that give us what we want, we repeat it. When we behave in ways and we don't get the result that we don't want, we don't repeat it. And so over time, our life is made up of behaviors that turn into habits that typically give us what we want. Now, there's something more that's important to understand, and that is that there's basically two parts of our brain. There's the conscious and the subconscious. The subconscious part of our brain is what helps our body function. So the subconscious is what keeps our heart beating, our lungs functioning, all of our organs working to keep our body alive. In fact, that's the real function of the subconscious. It's to keep us alive. The problem is the subconscious is just that. We're unaware of how it's operating and what it's doing. We're only aware of the conscious part of our mind. And here's the thing, 90%, or sometimes even more, but about 90% of our time, we are being controlled by the subconscious part of our brain. Only about 10% of the time are we in our conscious mind, meaning we're aware of what we're doing and why we're doing it. So think about this. If everything we do for a reason, I feel a level of discomfort, I feel pain, or I feel emotional discomfort, unhappiness, sadness, boredom, whatever that may be, and I'm in the subconscious part of my brain. All I know is that I feel this level of discomfort. My subconscious now is going to go to work, because if I'm feeling discomfort, that's a signal to my subconscious that I'm in danger or my safety is at risk, because remember, the job of our subconscious is to keep us safe and to keep us alive. So anytime we feel or are in a negative state, the subconscious is going to want to fix that. I'm feeling unhappy. I'm feeling some level of pain. My subconscious goes to work trying to come up with something to change that state. So without me consciously thinking about things, maybe I just go with something that someone has said, something that I have observed, and I try something and it worked. Let's say I was feeling sad, and for whatever reason I decide to go eat, or to go turn on and listen to music, or to watch TV, and that state of unhappiness goes away. So my subconscious creates a belief that, oh, that worked. So the next time I'm in that state of unhappiness or sadness, my subconscious will go, okay, last time we were here, I did this. So let's do it again. And we do it again. And if the state changes, then that just reinforces that belief that when we're in that negative state, if we do this, then it will change our state and give us what we want. So it's those behaviors that are keeping us alive. That's what the subconscious believes. So we could create all kinds of habits that seem to work for us in the short term. They give us what we want because they change our state, but it's only temporarily. But because we're not aware of what's going on, we never even question it. So again, 90% of the time we're on autopilot, which means we're doing things and we don't even know why we're doing them, but we just do the things that seem to work. And it's not until those things that we're doing stop working that we have the opportunity to look at our beliefs that are driving our behavior, those subconscious beliefs, and to begin to decide whether those beliefs are based on truth or not. Now, you may question whether or not there's truth, but we do know that there are laws that govern the world in which we live, like gravity. And it doesn't matter whether I believe in gravity or not, it still works and operates. So there are other things that govern the world in which we live. Those truths or laws I like to call principles, and those principles govern this world in which we live. So one of the principles is accountability, which says that each one of us is accountable for our life. No one can take it from us, and we can't give it away to anyone. Another principle is the principle of choice, that we are free to choose in any circumstance or situation what we think, what we feel, and what we do. And then the third principle is that the principle of control, that nobody can make us think anything, nobody can make us feel anything, and nobody can make us do anything that we don't want to do unless they're able to physically control us and make us do it. But other than that, we have control over our behavior, we have control over our emotions, and we have control over our conscious thought. So once we begin to realize and recognize that what we're doing is no longer working, it's no longer giving us the outcomes that we want, we can then make a conscious decision to change our behaviors. But there's a problem with that. We have attention span that's really short. In fact, it's only about 7 seconds long. So if I recognize that, let's say that I bite my fingernails, and I make a decision that I no longer want to bite them because I've been biting them too short and it's creating pain in my fingers, and maybe it doesn't look good. There could be a number of different reasons that I make a decision that I no longer want to bite my fingernails. So because of the pain, because of the embarrassment, because of whatever it is, I now have a desire to change my behavior. So again, we're not going to change anything in our life unless we have a desire to do so. There's a story about a traveling salesman who's driving out in the country, and he stops at this old farmhouse, and he walks up to the door, and when he gets up on the porch, there's this big wood porch that winds around the house. There's this old hound dog laying on the porch. And as he walks past the hound dog is just whining and moaning and groaning, and he looks at the dog and just thinks, man, what's wrong with the dog? But he goes and he knocks on the door, and he does whatever he's doing, with the people in the house. And then as he turns to leave, he walks past the dog, and the dog is still moaning and groaning. So he turns around to the old farmer and he says, what's wrong with your dog? And the farmer says, nothing. And he says, well, how come he's moaning and groaning? And he says, he's laying on a nail. And so the salesman says, well, why doesn't he get up and move? He says, well, it doesn't hurt that bad. So think about it. In life, sometimes we want to moan and groan and complain about things the way things are. But until we have a strong enough of a desire to change things, nothing's going to change. So I have a desire that I want to stop biting my nails. I make a decision that I'm not going to bite my nails any longer. But again, our attention span, it's very short. It's only about 7 seconds. So for about 7 seconds, I'm going to remember that I'm not going to bite my nails. And then I'm going about my day doing the other things that I do. And maybe I don't bite my nails until I'm sitting in front of the TV and I see something on the TV that triggers me. And all of a sudden, I notice that I've got my finger in my mouth and I'm biting on my nails again. And I'm like, where did that come from? I had made a decision I wasn't going to bite my nails any longer. But because I'm on autopilot, my mind was somewhere else. And I was triggered, and that trigger happened on autopilot. So it may be that the reason that I bite my nails is because of a certain emotion or a certain thought that I have. And whenever I bite my nails, it distracts me from that thought, or maybe it's a way of comforting me. And so whenever I'm in that state, if I'm unaware of myself being in that state, the automatic response is I'm going to go to biting my nails. And so that's why it's so hard to change bad habits, is because they work. If they didn't work, we would have never created them to begin with. So whether that's smoking cigarettes or drinking or using drugs or biting your fingernails or swearing or anger or any of those things that you may get to a place that you decide this is no longer working for me, the reason that those habits were created is because at some point in our life, they worked for us. And so that can help in accepting ourselves. And if we have habits that are, quote, bad habits, that doesn't mean that we're bad people. What it means is that throughout our life, as we were trying to achieve a state of happiness, we found things that gave us the result we were looking for in the short term. And because we were on autopilot, we didn't maybe recognize that long term it wasn't benefiting us. But as we did it over and over and over, it just became ingrained in our subconscious. So that's why it's hard to change them. And I'll just give you a couple of tips of the process of changing that behavior. So it starts with the desire, which we already mentioned. Second, I need to seek out knowledge and information. So, before that, I need to have a belief that I can change the behavior. Because if I don't believe that I can change it, I'm not going to be willing to put forth the work or the effort to try to make the change. So I have the desire, next I have the belief, then I seek out knowledge and understanding. So knowledge and understanding of why I'm doing what I'm doing, maybe identify the false belief that's driving that behavior. I then have to be willing to let those false beliefs go. And then I want to find new knowledge or information, hopefully based on principle or truth, that I can replace the old beliefs with, and then make a decision to use that new behavior. And then here's what the process will look like. as I find a new behavior that works, so I try it out. And if it works, then I know, okay, this is something that I want to do again and again and again. But I got to change the old conditioned behavior. So what will happen is, as I move forward, I'll be on autopilot and I will be triggered. And because I'm unaware, I'll go back to my old behavior. And then when I'm in the middle of my old behavior, or after I've done my old behavior, I'll go, oh, I did that behavior again. So don't beat up on yourself. Just recognize that you're beginning to be more aware of it. And as you become aware of it multiple times after doing it, eventually you'll begin to catch yourself when you're in the middle of it. And so then you can stop and change and do the new behavior then. As you continue to work on being aware of it, you'll begin to catch it earlier and earlier in the process. And then you'll begin to catch it when you're triggered, and you'll replace it with the new behavior. And as you continue in that process, it will become more and more of the new habit and the new behavior. So you'll be able to eliminate the old bad or non-working habit and replace it with a new habit that actually will give you the results that you want, not only in the short term, but in the long term in your life. Thanks for watching. If you've got some habits that you struggle with breaking, comment below. I'd love to hear about them, and if this has been helpful to you in breaking those habits. And if you want to know more about who we are and what we do, visit our website at principlebasedliving.com.